expertise at high levels in consumer products. Prior to working at Airtel, Akamo operated as managing director for looking to disrupt and change the narrative on the continent. Ashim has over 15 years of experience working in tech, banking, finance, and leading multinational teams and organizations across Africa, Germany, the Middle East, and Asia, giving her a global perspective and local insight into the opportunities and risks organizations face in today's quickly moving world. Once again, please put your hands together for Ashim Egunjobi. Finally, I guess I'm not Nigerian enough if I don't say last but not the least. Let's please welcome our moderator for this panel session, Sholakpe Akinpelu, who's the founder, CEO of Hervest. Please put your hands together as she comes on stage. Sholakpe Akinpelu is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder at Hervest NG, a fintech bubble mission to close the gender gap and to help women embrace technology, as well as chairman, Technology Nigeria British Chamber of Commerce. I must also add that she is an author of Stripped, an African woman's guide to building generational wealth. It's not yet out. It'll be out on the 1st of December, but it is available to pre-order on all platforms. Yes,
Thank you so much, Olive.
You're welcome. Once again, please put your hands together for Sholakpe Akinpelu, founder, CEO of Hervest. And before this panel session starts, I want to mention again, just like we did with the first panel, we'll open the floor for questions and answers from those in the hall. It's a first come, first served basis, as well as our virtual audience. So please start to drop your questions as they speak. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Olive. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sholakpe Akinpelu, and that was already a great introduction, so I will not bore you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you, ladies and gentlemen, someone I truly greatly, respect. It's a pleasure having you on the panel, and I feel honored this afternoon. Hi, Ashim. Hello, Yomo. All right, so let's get right into the business. Yomo, we understand how hard, especially in this climate, it is to build. In the tech ecosystem, you're one of your brand and yourself, are quite respected, and you've built something quite formidable and exportable from the continent. How did you start? What inspired you?
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. Hope everyone's having a good time. So Bamboo started, we were solving a problem for ourselves. So I was working in PE at the time, learning a bit more about finance, and I wanted to buy stocks, but I was also I'm Nigerian, I have only a Nigerian passport, and so that means getting onboarded at a lot of places was hard. You'd call a lot of places, and for the international places, they just didn't want to onboard Nigerians. No one wants that KYC wahala of, onboarding Nigerians. And, for some of the places here, either there were high minimums at the time, or, I didn't have that much money I wanted to invest. I also wanted to play around to see what was going to happen. And so at that time, I spoke to my co-founder who's now my co-founder about it. I spoke to my friend about it, and he said, he had the same problem as well, and he was working on it. And I was like, that sounds fantastic, because I had a job. I worked in private equity. I wasn't trying to be a startup founder. I was like, that sounds good. So whenever you solve it, please let me know. I'd like to be one of your first users. I liked my job. It was a good job. Actually paid actual money. And, he kept in touch. He would show me stuff. He would ask for advice. He would keep sending stuff and on. And I kept replying him. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have replied him. But I kept replying him. We could go back and forth, give me feedback. And just on a random day, I was on holiday, actually, and he sent something. And he was like, do you want to just be my co-founder? I'm actually looking for a co-founder. And I was like, A, I'm on holiday right now. Mm-hmm. B, I actually have a job, so give me some time to think about this. And I decided really quickly. I'm generally an impulsive, to some degree, type of person. I decided within 2 weeks to, quit my job, start a new start, and do this. But fundamentally, the thing was, we're solving a problem for ourselves. And the real belief was, if we had this problem and we knew a circle of people around us that had this problem, there would be enough people with this problem that we could be solving a big enough problem for everyone. So that's the overall thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ashim, I'll come to you. Especially, learning from what Yomo just said, just do it. If the problem is big enough, does that count for you as an investor?
It's a very good question, and thanks for putting me on the hot seat here, considering I'm the only investor on the panel. I would say yes, to a degree. So if you're looking to solve a problem, that's always the first start. The question is obviously always, how real is the problem? So in your case, Yanmo, you said you were solving a problem for yourself, but clearly there was a validation that it wasn't just a problem for yourself, that it was actually a problem and a pain point that you were solving, not just for yourself, but for lots of other people as well. So market validation, market sizing is super important. You've got to understand, well, how big is this market? How am I going to actually make money with this great idea that I have? And, you know, this problem that I believe that I have, do other people actually also have it? So yes, absolutely. For us as investors, we love if you're passionate about what you're trying to build, right? I don't believe that Main has been built in the way that it was built if the passion hadn't been there. And the same goes Damilola from Shutlers on the previous panel talked about grit. As an entrepreneur, grit is probably the single most important characteristic that you must have in order to succeed. Without the grit, when you get the no's, when you get the failures, when you are, you know, surrounded by people who are saying, hey, it can't be done, you've got to have something to hang on to. And that passion, solving real pain points, having the validation, of course, counts for a lot.
Sure, it does. All right. A fallout from that, because we're talking about women in business and then taking opportunities. Because I know that you talk to both male and female founders on a daily, are there any differences? And what can women really learn from your experience from both genders?
So this is an interesting one, and I probably have a contrarian view because honestly, I grew up in a household of 3 girls. My dad is a techie at heart, studied computer science, you know, in the, I don't know, 60s in Germany. I mean, all he talks about is computer science, okay? And he has 3 girls, so he didn't ever care that we were girls. It was never even up for a debate that, oh, because they're girls, maybe I shouldn't talk about computer science. I started programming Visual Basic when I was 13. The math in Visual Basic was beyond the level that I had even learned in school. My dad did not care. He said, you know what, you guys need to know how to program, you need to know how to code, and you need to know how to operate a computer. My kids ask me now, Mama, why do you know how to type so fast? I said, because I was your opa's, your granddad's secretary when I was really young. So computers were never something that were, you know, a secret or a mystery. And I think he really led us into a world where we never believed that there was even a difference between men or women. And it can be an advantage or a disadvantage because obviously the world very quickly can sometimes shake you back into reality, right? But when you have the confidence that actually you have always been empowered to believe that you are absolutely the same, that is also the world that you see. So the world that I see, and when I talk to entrepreneurs, whether they're women, whether they're men, I just want to know what your business is. I want to know if you're solving a pain point. I want to know if you're going to create impact. I want to know if you're going to drive Africans to prosperity. And I want to know if you're going to make us all money. That's it.
Lovely. All right, coming right to you, Olu. There's this school of thought, and I would still like to, you know, hear from Ashim on this, that most often you have women pitching their business ideas like vitamins. You know, you need it, it's nice for you, it's nice to have on both sides, that is to consumers and, you know, funders alike. While you have men telling you that it's a painkiller. If you don't take it, you know, you probably have this headache all day, right? Someone gave that feedback and I'm like, oh, really? And I realized truly, you know, you see the male founders, when they go on, you'd be like, yes, this is the 8th wonder of the world. The same products that you have, right? And that takes me to you. How have you been selling these painkillers? What can we learn? Because you're the cat with 9 lives, gone through transactions, you know, billions of dollars. How has the journey been, and you know, what can we learn, especially in building sustainable, enduring and lasting businesses?
That sounds like a professor's question. Let me thanks FSDH for this program. Thanks for the invitation. I want to pick on Tony first. I had, when I was coming, I had him say something about women. And to amplify what he was saying on the contrary, that my bosses are here when I was at MTN, and they are women. Funke was our executive in technology as our CTO, and Amina was our exec in HR. We were general managers then. So that's women leading MTN, who had now become a multi-billion-dollar business. So some of the things we are talking about in terms of women taking executive responsibilities have been happening, and they are just seated. It's not surprising that Funke had gone ahead, not being comfortable. I will have to tell the story about the bureaucracy and the politics inside MTN to have a very short stint and moved on to start our own, being an entrepreneur. So there's nothing that women cannot do, and they have been doing it. We have what we are only seeing are the generations of the Funkes and the Yamus now, but it's been there. So I'll just tell the story around what Opay's story, maybe just to illustrate it. Opay's story in terms of building a business is largely about going where the incumbents cannot go, just because it is not natural to them. Banks have been in Nigeria all this while. But the traditional ways in which banks operate, their cost model, their mindset, their technology was such that they saw a large market, but classic, what you call willful blindness. You see a large market, but you assume because you cannot solve for the problem, you say there's no business there. Therefore, when typically incumbents define their business plan, the concept of addressable market is based on those who can afford to buy what I sell. So a classic inside-out thinking rather than an outside-in thinking. This is what I have to sell. How many people are out there who can afford to buy it for my business model? What Opay has done is to deploy simple things but technology. Take the branch that was in the classic physical structure and take 70%. It will never be as perfect as a bank branch. Take 70% of what the bank branch can do embedded in a offline terminal, adopted and adapted to new technologies, and take them to people who have not been served in their millions, who will not complain that technology is crude. If we want to bank Toyi will say, well, I need a jacket, but there are a lot of Nigerians, 50% of Nigerians today, even as of today, are not banked. Those are the opportunities, and finding low-cost model to serve those people. So in building businesses that will scale, and I suspect talking to investors, it's largely going to be around, they all know ultimately you cannot beat a First Bank or a Union Bank or an FSDH in its traditional game, in the kind of traditional customers that it serves. What are the kind of customers that an FSDH might not be able to serve in wealth management, which are young people who will be ignored, whose income the big banks will consider as too small to pay the gentlemen and ladies with their expensive Gucci jackets and suits. But someone with a low-cost tech model that can bring millions of those customers into a platform and unlock the potential of that market. And on top of that, tell a passionate painkiller story about it. Convert those great spreadsheets into a powerful story about solving a problem. That's what investors want to hear. And that's the story about what Opay has done. And when you've done that, you realize that there are also adjacent opportunities across what you do. So we are building a very strong offline business. That's how we built our business. But side by side with it, we see the same merchants that were brought into the payment rail are now we now leverage our relationship to bring them into online. Therefore, we continue to grow our revenues within the same context of excluded market. So That's the story. And of course, it has to be a market that can scale.
Lovely, absolutely, and it's highly scalable. Just to add to that, talking about leverage collaborations, we are currently integrating with OPay. So when I say, I mean Harvest. So Harvest basically, okay, first off, I have to put it out there. He mentioned Unbanked. This is a women-focused event. The face of an unbanked Nigeria is female. It's female, it's rural, they are mostly excluded, they're on the fringes of financial services. And when you're excluded on the other side, what does economic, because you cannot even empower someone who doesn't know what's possible, right? And that's what Harvest is solving for. So we go into the rural areas, they are mostly agrarian, and then we empower this, I don't want to use the word empower, forgive me. And then we offer these women blended financing, giving them access to capital, technical know-how in terms of great agronomy practices, and then give them markets. That's the first layer. The second layer is what we are integrating with OPay. Now that they have some disposable cash, how can they save it away? Of course, they would not enter a physical bank. A lot of them are even terrified. But with an Harvest Wallet and OPay agent, we don't have to replicate what OPay had done. They go there and they save into a Harvest Wallet. Thank you for such collaborations and such leverages. And that takes me right to you, because yes, funding is key, Yomo. And from someone who knows that one of the painkillers to solve the painkillers is funding, we are currently raising our seed, and it's been, painkiller stories over painkiller stories. So how did you, and what helped, with closing Bamboo's funding? I know about YC, but then, the other ones, what helped, and what can a lot of women in this room and women, men alike, virtually learn from your fundraising stories, your fundraising journey, and then do better by that?
So that's an interesting question. I think, but we've had what looks fun fundraising thing, but no. So our first thing, like we, started thinking about the problem. I was just working on it from I really would love for you guys to solve this problem point of view with my, my now co-founder. And so when he was doing his research, he spoke to a couple of people. So our first investors were angels, and they were angels because they also wanted us to solve the problem. So for them too. So in the same way, I was always doing an offering to help because it was a problem I had. Our first couple of investors were also angels that invested, and it continued. So we raised an angel family and friends round, as you call it. I think one thing that's worth noting, especially for people listening, and if you're not used to fundraising, is it's called a family and friends round. It's probably, it might be a Silicon Valley convention, I'm not sure, but it doesn't necessarily have to come from your family and friends, right? It can come from someone you know, who you're able to talk to about your idea. It can come from someone who you've never met before, but is passionate about your idea. If you tell your story, storytelling is super important in fundraising. If you're able to tell a compelling story that reminds people, that tells people why you can make money, that's the most important thing about this story. I know we all get bogged down in this problem and why it's cool, but people that give you money want their money back. I think it's something to always remember. If your family and friends want their money back, if your parents give you money, they want their, everyone wants their money back. So tell people a compelling story about why they can make money. And then we were able to raise a seed round, or pre-seed round, I don't know what they're called anymore, and we built the app and we launched the app. When we launched the app, we were going to apply to Y Combinator, and we realized that, okay, Y Combinator interviews were in December. So we had like a little bit of capital left, and we're like, okay, what do we need to get into Y Combinator? I think that's what DDK was talking about, being intentional, knowing exactly what you're doing. Well, that was our one goal from when we launched in October, at the end of October 2019. So Y Combinator interviews were on December 4th, 2019. And I remember Richmond, my co-founder, called it Project Magic. And he told everyone, we had like a small team at the time, and he said, we're going to move fast, we might break things, we might offend you. After December 5th, we will apologize for anything. Sorry, don't be angry. Don't be angry. And that was the entire goal. We are having meetings every single day. And those meetings weren't what's going on. We had key metrics, number of users, how much you were spending on marketing, how much you were spending on everything, how much we were spending journey and what we needed to hit. And every day we would look at them versus our targets. In the nights, whether you hit the calls, I remember there was one call where I started napping. I just heard Richmond's name shouting in my ear. Yeah, I'm almost happy. I was like, hey, God. So that was to get into Y. And, it was exciting. We actually got into Y Combinator. It was really exciting. And I remember when we got into Y Combinator, I was like, this finally, we'll be able to finish fundraising. I'd heard that, like, after Y Combinator, you could raise money. And I was so excited that we'll have demo day, all our problems will be over. And then COVID happened. And so first thing that happened is Y Combinator has a thing called demo day. And what that means is they put you in a room like this and there's like 8,000 investors in the room. And yeah, odds are you're going to raise, right? If you have a business that's good enough to get to Y Combinator and you can talk to 8,000 investors at once, a couple of them are going to give you some money. But then we didn't have demo day, because COVID happened and no one was going to sit in a room with 1,000 people at the time. So we had the first ever virtual demo day, which means but what that meant was that you pitched, right? And, you hoped someone watched your pitch and liked your profile, etc. Again, in prepping for that, we were super intentional. I remember Richmond and I were both in San Francisco at the time. We were like, okay, this is now virtual. And let's be honest, COVID is, A, it's scary, but B, people are looking at, have to watch your pitch on a screen. They're going to get bored very quickly. You can't be talking to anyone for 15 minutes. And so we had a talk what do we need to say in the first 30 seconds that's going to get them to watch this whole thing? And what do the graphs need to be like? And how do we, what do we need to build? So all we did, we just had one graph. Second thing, where it was literally just had a cute big length that just said, we've grown. At that time, it was 167% month on month. That was a big, the second graph that we had. And you would then be excited to see, okay, what else are these guys talking about? But COVID still made it hard to fundraise. It took us a while to fundraise. We raised from various, institutional investors. Especially if you're raising as an African startup in Silicon Valley, a lot of people just tell you straight up, this sounds so cool, we love this idea, but we don't have an Africa thesis. So, we can't do. And, speaking of women and communities, one of the first people who wrote us a big check that actually got our ball rolling was Maya at Ingressive. And it was fantastic because if you know anything about fundraising, another random fundraising rule is investors like to hear that other people have invested, and investors like to hear that your round is almost closed and that you've gotten your check, that you've gotten the check. So it was nice. Maya gave us a relatively big check at the time. In fact, at the time, it was a huge check. I was so excited when Maya's check came through, and then we could tell other investors hey, this is where we are in our funding process, and then we were able to close pretty quickly and get back to work. Because another thing about fundraising, to be honest, is that if you have more than one co-founder, it's always advised for one co-founder to focus on fundraising and the other co-founder to focus on doing work, because fundraising ends up becoming a full-time job and it takes a totally different mindset than operating the company. But anyway, so now we finished Y Combinator, we've raised a seed round, yay. We start, we start working, etc. One thing generally to remember is that money sounds like a lot of money until you start spending the money. So, so I remember, we finished our seed round. It was about $1.4 million. I remember we got this, and I started trying, what are we doing with $1 million? But money sounds like a lot of money until you start spending money. So far, it's always been important to be careful about money and think about stuff like unit economics and spend carefully and go on from there. And also for investors like to see that because they want to feel that your money that the money they give you gets you further along to, your next big milestone. But again, when we finished raising that money, we were intentional. Our question was, what do we need to raise a Series A, right? So you raised a seed, your next question is Series A. And so we sat down together as, a small team, and we said, okay, these are the goals we need to hit to raise our Series A, and this is when we want to raise our Series A by. All right, and it was a thing, and this is what you need to do. So again, it became intentional. We split it. Okay, this is what we need to do. These were key metrics we were focused on. For us as a business, cost metrics have always been stuff that we're also thing. Not that cool in tech because everyone just wants to focus on growth style metrics, but cost style metrics were always important for us. Then obvious stuff like revenue and growth. And we sort of just worked at that very consistently, weekly check-ins around those key metrics, all of that. And so by the time we were going to raise a Series A and we're talking to investors, we weren't scrabbling because this was stuff we would already first of all pull together, right? Luckily I had a background in like private equity, so a lot of what I think better, much more clear with Excel spreadsheets. So a lot of what I was doing was already putting together spreadsheets and working. And again, we worked with another woman, Nicole Yembra. She runs Chrysalis Capital, and they helped us a lot with our fundraise and thinking through what we wanted to do and talking to investors at the time. But again, it was, it wasn't an easy journey. I remember we had our first, we got our first term sheets from an investor, and then something happened, they dropped out, and I was like, God, how are we going to get something? And at that time, they told you African companies, you don't get the luxury of choice. If you have at least one term sheet, just sign it and go. And then our investor dropped out, so we're like, God. Then we got another term sheet from another investor, but the terms were terrible, they weren't great, let's say. The terms weren't good. And sometimes you have to have conviction because your investors, for us, we believe are also your partners in that they're helping you move forward. You're at this point, yes, they provide capital, but you also, want to help them. And, we had conviction at the time. And we said, look, we can't accept these terms because our business won't be able to grow under these terms, and we won't be able to solve the problem we want to solve necessarily under these terms. And then, we got another investor. It took a while. I remember I had to work all of my Christmas. But if I need go, so I guess my main thing I would say is generally around being super intentional at each stage in your journey.
Okay.
And super intentional about what you need to get to the next stage of your journey. And then working just really, really working very, very focused at that intention. But overall, remembering that investors are giving you money and they would like their money back.
Sure.
Ideally times 10.
And that's another masterclass. I think if you're going to have a deputy keynote speaker today, will be Yomo. Thank you so much for that. Lovely. All right. So, talking about numbers, and I'm coming back to you right now, Ashim.